Ew. Scam. Help me. Help. Oh.
Old world is getting to me. There's just no trust, no integrity. So I loaded up the kids, took my wife by the arm, and I moved on out to a Colorado farm. Now it's early to bed, early to rise. The crops are plowed and it's no surprise. City folks are fighting and I don't give a darn, 'cause I make my living on a Colorado farm. I gotta drive the tractor, gotta cut the grass. Chut chut goes the baler like it's never gonna last. There's food in the kitchen and there's blood in the farm. That's life living on a Colorado farm. Ice cold beer, pickup truck, country music, listing shit. We got integrity to keep us warm. That's what you get on a Colorado farm. And I'm gonna stay on a Colorado farm. Shit.
We're live. Happy 420 to everyone on the East Coast, or to everyone wherever you are.
It's 420 somewhere.
Don't forget to take your coronavirus
Prophylaxis
medicine. Oh yeah, actually we actually have a light up song. So everyone take this time to light up
Sing
with
to
us.
your joint while you lovingly
The Harlem Shake.
What's wrong, Ryan?
I just had the craziest dream that I just turned into Wayne Brady.
Oh, that wasn't a dream.
Wait, what?
That's your cue to inhale. Oh, Kier, thank you for joining us. I want to live on a Colorado farm.
I'll start it and then you guys can come join when I need professional testers.
Seriously.
Product testers.
Oh my gosh, Josh Kim. You guys don't know, but we started smoking weed like 3 or 4 years ago, and we didn't know anything about weed. And
I knew how to grow it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to even smoke it.
So that guy taught us everything we know about weed. So anyways, there's been a spike in COVID-19 cases. So the rising...
Predictable.
Yeah, obviously predictable.
No one followed the guidelines. They're like written out really easy. 6 feet and a mask.
So let's
6
see.
feet and a mask.
Let's get an update on how the numbers are in the United States with the rising, and then we'll see what Dr. Fauci has to say about it.
Time for our rising crisis update. We'll begin with the number of coronavirus cases here in the United States and around the world. So here in the United States, we're quickly approaching 2 million cases of coronavirus and an additional 19,500 added since yesterday. Deaths stand at 112,000. with approximately 1,200 deaths recorded yesterday. And worldwide, 7.2 million cases.
1,200 deaths, and we're at in a day. That's like 2.5 9/11s a week that we're going through.
Wait. How many died in 9/11?
I think 3,000 in a day. So 1,200 a day? That's like over 8,000 people a week.
Well, it went down before. Now it's going back up.
Well, we've been protesting for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say after the protest started.
All right, well, let's keep going.
Plus, we had the protest before that.
Deaths at 411,000 with an increase of 4,907. So you can slightly troubling uptick there in the number of deaths at 1,200 cases, Crystal, which I think is related to some of the more, some of the events both that we see in the news, but also just in some return to daily life.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And look, one day is not a trend, but when you see moving back up to numbers like 1,200 deaths a day, that is very troubling. And in fact, there's new reporting from the Washington Post and other places about a number of states, especially that had big Memorial Day festivities, are seeing a sharp rise both in infections and also hospitalization. So in particular, the number of coronavirus cases worldwide continues to increase sharply. But here at home, in more than a dozen states in Puerto Rico, they're recording their highest averages of new cases since the pandemic began. Hospitalizations in at least 9 states have also been on the rise since Memorial Day, suggesting that the pool parties and everybody getting out and going crazy, this is what science says. When people are out and they are congregating, you are likely to see a spike in infections. This hasn't magically disappeared, and it's not going to magically disappear. States like Texas in particular, Arizona's another one, Arkansas, where they're seeing sharp rises right now. So, and not just like one day, but over the past 10 to 15 days. So that is troubling.
Yeah.
That's scary that it's worldwide, because I think it goes to show it's easy to mitigate coronavirus in terms of socially distance, wash your face, wash your hands, wear a mask. But then once you start loosening those guidelines, the infections and death rate goes up very quickly. And we're not just seeing that in the United States where we're protesting, but we see it state by state, but also in other countries in the world.
That opened up. Yeah, it's the numbers that go up really fast. And it's people don't realize how hard and how long it
so that balance
took to bring them down. But in all of the pandemics too, there was always a second wave.
Yeah, so
cover that in my radar today. It takes about 2 weeks in order to statistically show up, and that's
what we're seeing now.
Beginning now to see that from Memorial Day. And one of the other warnings, this is reporting over from the Daily Beast, is that the task force over at the White House is warning governors of a coronavirus spike that's tied to the protest, both because there were some testing sites which were actually destroyed, but broadly, it's just in terms of, this is something Dr. Fauci said, and any honest medical professionals will tell you, is that this type of congregation is going to lead to some coronavirus outbreak. We'll begin to see that in the data probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks from now, when we'll really try to understand the impact of this. And again, this is not to impugn the protest. It's just you have to cover it fairly. There is a consequence.
No, you need to know
the type of this behavior.
People should have information. I mean, that's the bottom line. I will say, encouragingly, the protests that I've seen and been to, everybody has basically been wearing face masks, which we are learning. In contrary to what we were told to start with, lied to about that, face masks, they don't really do anything. In fact, they may make it worse. Turns out that is actually one of the most effective things that you can possibly do. So at least people, if you're going out, wear your mask, be safe.
There you go.
Yeah, when this first started, the CDC told people not to wear masks because the moisture that it's caused when you're not wearing an N95 mask could make your infection rate go up. So this is the worrying thing, though, when it says Trump's task force, so that's the same task force that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx is on, warns governors of COVID spike tied to protests. And it's worrying.
They have an excuse to stomp out protests.
Well, no, it's worrying because they understand the impact COVID-19 has, but then there's no actual plan from the federal government to actually try to get the protests controlled. They're just warning the governors this is gonna get worse, because it's why are there so many protesters? It's yes, the BLM movement, but also the economics of the coronavirus makes it so everyone's at home unemployed and they have nothing to do. And so unless you pass an economic alleviation like a UBI or a universal basic income, which that's what the presidential administration can do, the protests are only gonna get bigger in number and keep going. So let's see what Dr. Fauci has to say about the COVID-19 spike.
Cases, as we know, surging globally, fast approaching 2 million here in the U.S., with the death toll now topping 112,000. Infections are still on the rise in at least 21 states, and hospitalizations increasing in 8 states. Now there's growing concern about those nationwide protests as members of the D.C. National Guard have tested positive for COVID after last week's demonstrations. Dr.
That's crazy. The National Guard that they're sending to control the protests are now testing positive for COVID-19. And they get the Daiso face mask.
Anthony Fauci calling the virus his worst nightmare, and he joins us now exclusively on GMA this morning. Dr. Fauci, we always appreciate you taking time to talk to our audience. We really do appreciate that. And you just heard me talk about how members of the D.C. National Guard testing positive. Sir, how concerned are you about it spreading due to these protests that we're seeing, even though we see many people at the protests that are wearing masks?
Yes, I mean, the most important thing, unfortunately, the report of the National Guardsmen being infected is certainly disturbing, but is not surprising. The issue of physical separation is important. Masks can help, but it's masks plus physical separation. And when you get congregations like we saw with the demonstrations, as we have said, myself and other health officials, that's taking a risk. And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is just an example of the kinds of things we were concerned about. So I wouldn't be surprised that members of the congregation that were there demonstrating could also be infected. And many of them would then go back to where they were, because not everyone was demonstrating in the city where they live. They've come from the outside. So it's the kind of things that we were concerned about. And unfortunately, we're seeing it come true right now.
You know what's crazy is when you see a lot of the pictures of the protesters, you see them with the masks on. So you would assume a lot of these protesters understand the risk of getting together like this because, sports are canceled, Coachella's canceled. But I think that shows a bigger indicator that risk is worth it because they have, at this point, nothing else to lose. Like, them staying at home and not getting coronavirus isn't going to fix their situation. Mm-hmm. And so, it's disheartening.
Yes, but people, they are very passionate about what they are fighting for, and it's very evident that they feel that it's worth the possible risk. We see that states are opening, New York City opening this week as well. What are the concerns there as we are seeing, it rise a little bit like that? So what is most important for people, do you feel, for people, the public to know this morning, Dr. Fauci?
Well, what they need to know is that when you open, that doesn't mean that everything is okay and you can do whatever you want. You still have to practice a degree of caution and carefully go through the process of trying to normalize. That means you still should be wearing a mask. You still should be trying as best as possible to have that physical distancing. You still need to wash your hands as often as you possibly can and avoid congregation in large numbers. These things, even though you're trying appropriately, because we know everyone wants to approach normality and get things back to normal, including the economy. But that doesn't mean that all bets are off. And that's the reason why we say, be careful and do it prudently.
Yeah, this is the crazy thing about each individual state is that they have to balance basically opening up their economy and getting businesses back, and then also keeping infections down. And it's like the lack of support from the federal government makes it even harder because all of these states are now spending their money until bankruptcy with no help in sight. And so no wonder
How can the feds help if it's so?
I know it's
they already put out guidelines.
That's the thing. It's like
how do they?
Canada has figured it out. Germany's figured it out. Spain's figured it out. It's like in order to keep your economy up during this crisis, you need to keep up consumer spending to drive GDP. And the only way you can keep consumer spending up is universal basic income. And that's why all of these states are pushing for opening up, is because they don't have any other option to keep their economies going.
Yeah, so they're not going to do universal basic income for most of them is not an option.
Yeah, it can only come from the federal government, from basically Trump's administration and Congress.
They're not going to do it.
I know. We'll see.
The states to figure it out.
I think the amount of people
that
die from poverty, if they don't do anything, will quickly outnumber the amount of people that die from COVID-19. So let's keep going.
And the vaccine, people want to know about the vaccine. And you have said that you're very confident that we know that it's being tested in people right now, but you're very confident that there'll be not just one, but there'll be more than one. What leads you to be so optimistic about being having more than one vaccine available? And when do you think it'll be available to the public?
Okay, so let me just clarify one thing. When you're developing vaccines, there's never a guarantee that you're going to have a safe and effective vaccine. What I'm confident about is how well the process is proceeding in the development of more than one candidate, that in early testing, both in the animals and in the phase 1 testing in humans, looks quite promising, which makes me cautiously optimistic as we get into the early summer. We're going to be going into advanced clinical trials in at least one and close to maybe 3 or more candidates. Hopefully by the time we get to the mid and late fall, if the process goes well, we will have enough information to be able to make a decision whether the vaccine is safe and effective, which means if we are in good shape and that happens, we could have a vaccine either by the end of this calendar year or in the first few months of 2021. So that's the thing that makes me feel confident that the process is really on track. And that's good news. Again, in the context of never being able to guarantee success, things are clearly going in the right direction.
That's pretty crazy because a lot of estimates that we were saying was saying like at least 18 months to 2 years. And so now Dr. Fauci, one of the more conservative people on the task force, is saying we could see a vaccine by the end of this calendar year.
They had been saying that. It had been end of this calendar year.
Yeah, so that's 12 months. So you're ahead by 6 months maybe. And that's coming from Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, they don't
not,
know, like, if
not President Trump.
It changes, if it mutates.
No, that's what I'm saying. He's more conservative on when giving this kind of news, and he's saying it's promising. We could see a vaccine by the end of this calendar year. So pretty good. Let's keep going.
That's very promising indeed. And once there is a vaccine, how often do you think we would need it? Would it be like getting the flu shot every year?
You know, we don't know that right now. We're going to take it one step at a time. The first thing we want to do is to determine if it's safe and if it protects, how long that protection lasts.
Where are we testing?
We're going to have to obviously observe that. And that's the reason why when you make a vaccine, it isn't the end of the game. You have to keep following and see how long the duration of the protection is. We hope it's substantial, but if it isn't, you could always give a boost. So right now, step one, let's just prove that it's safe and effective, and then we'll go on from there.
Yes, that's an important step one. I can understand that. Also, let's talk a little bit about the range of symptoms and the severity, the range and the severity. And the WHO said something recently, suggested that asymptomatic spread is rare, and they then walked it back just a little bit. So can you clarify that for us?
Okay, so that's two questions. Let me take the first one. Clearly, this is a very unusual infection because, as you pointed out correctly, the range of manifestations are extraordinary. You can have people who are infected and have no symptoms. You can have people who are infected and have mild symptoms that they barely notice. Others have more severe symptoms. They become even more severe, requiring them to be at home for a couple of weeks. Some require hospitalization, and some require intensive care. And as we know, unfortunately, over 110,000 have already died in this country. So the range is extraordinary. To your question about asymptomatic transmission, what happened the other day is that a member of the WHO was saying that transmission from an asymptomatic person to an uninfected person was very rare. They walked that back because there's no evidence to indicate that's the case.
Oh, man. So someone from the WHO said that transmission from an asymptomatic person, so a person who has coronavirus but isn't showing the normal symptoms of they can't smell or taste, they can't pass it on to, or transmission from that kind of person to an unaffected person was rare.
Which is ridiculous.
Yes.
The whole reason why this virus is so successful and turned into a pandemic was because of that
And that's
those asymptomatic, and especially that little incubation period. That's how it spread and got to different hosts. That's
from the World Health Organization. And so I don't agree with Trump on a lot of things, but him defunding the World Health Organization, I don't have a big issue with. So let's go. 33 seconds left on this clip.
In fact, the evidence that we have, given the percentage of people, which is about 45% of the totality of infected people, likely are without symptoms. And we know from epidemiological studies that they can transmit to someone who is uninfected, even when they're without symptoms. So to make a statement to say that's a rare event was not correct. And that's the reason why the WHO walked that back.
Yeah, so be careful where you get your news, because you really can't be too careful, especially now that legally you're allowed to be a little more free. You still gotta.
Also, don't just randomly take hydroxychloroquine either. You know.
This is interesting. It's a conspiracy theory. The government knows that without UBI, states will be forced to open to save their economies, therefore increasing deaths by COVID-19 without direct blame on the president. And this is,
the protesters dead.
I don't even think this is much of a conspiracy. I think it's just a political maneuver to use like a good crisis to get politics to fall in your favor.
Of course. Initially, his polls like skyrocketed.
Yeah, so it's like the reason
he was responding well, and then it kept going and kept going. They're like, "What's going on?"
It's
and
like
the economy tanking, and they're just like. Pfft.
The reason why we can't get UBI is because of political positioning. Basically, it's like the Republicans want something, the Democrats want something else. They're all kind of serving the same donor class, but it keeps the people that need UBI from blaming them and positioning it against each other. So everyone who's Republican is always blaming the Democrats, and everyone who's Democrat is always blaming a Republican. Oh. Okay. Well, so we gotta cover a thing that's hard to watch. Is everyone nice and high? So George Floyd's brother, they just recently buried George Floyd. I think that might have been today. George Floyd's, So George Floyd's brother gave a testimony, and
At the Senate?
Yes. So it's hard to watch, but I think it's important because it shows why this movement is important, because it humanizes the direct people it impacts, which is George Floyd's family. Like he's not just like a black guy that got stopped on the street unnecessarily and then murdered by cops. He was actually he's a person.
Well, yeah, they all are. That's the thing. But he's not just one. There's a lot. But
yes.
Finally, this one was like the straw that broke the camel's back almost.
Yeah.
It was just like a perfect storm. But now we can really give voice and a story, like a real one, to this, like one real good example of a family, and like bring it.
Yeah.
Let's
take a look at this clip.
But.
Everyone get your joints ready. Maybe when I watched the full thing, I teared up a lot. I think because I'm a younger brother, and so he is his younger brother.
Daughter,
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to watch, but I think it's important, and it's definitely important to discuss. So
yes,
let's take a look.
Gerald Nadler and members of the committee, thank you for the invitation here today to talk about my big brother, George. The world knows him as George, but I called him Perry. Yesterday, we laid him to rest. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I'm the big brother now, so it's my job to comfort my brothers and my sisters, Perry's kids, and everyone who loved him. And that's a lot of people. I have to be the strong one now because George is gone. And me being the big brother now is why I'm here today. To do what Perry always would have done. To take care of the family and others. I couldn't take care of George that day he was killed, but maybe by speaking with you today, I can make sure that his death would not be in vain. to make sure that he is more than another face on a t-shirt, more than another name on a list that won't stop growing. George always made sacrifices for our family, and he made sacrifices for complete strangers. He gave the little that he had to help others. He was our gentle giant. I was reminded of that when I watched the video of his murder. He called all the officers sir. He was mild-mannered. He didn't fight back. He listened to all the officers. The man who took his life, who suffocated him for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, he still called them sir as he begged for his life. I can't tell you the kind of pain you feel when you watch something like that. When you watch your big brother, who you looked up to your whole entire life, die begging for his mom, I'm tired. I'm tired of pain. Pain you feel when you watch something like that. When you watch your big brother, who you looked up to for your whole life, die begging for his mom, I'm here to ask you to make it stop. Stop the pain. Stop us from being tired. George called for help and he was ignored. Please listen to the call I'm making to you now, to the calls of our family and the calls ringing out the streets across the world. People of all backgrounds, genders, and races have come together to demand change. Honor them, honor George, and make the necessary changes that make law enforcement the solution and not the problem. Hold them accountable when they do something wrong. Teach them what it means to treat people with empathy and respect. Teach them what necessary force is. Teach them that deadly force should be used rarely and only when life is at risk. George wasn't hurting anyone that day. He didn't deserve to die over $20. I'm asking you, is that what a black man is worth? $20? This is 2020. Enough is enough. The people marching in the streets are telling you enough is enough. By the leaders that in our country, the world needs the right thing. The people elected you to speak for them, to make positive change. George's name means something. You have the opportunity here today to make your names mean something too. If his death ends up changing the world for the better, and I think it will, then he died as he lived. It is on you to make sure his death is not in vain. I didn't get the chance to say goodbye to Perry while he was here. I was robbed of that. But I know he's looking down at us now. Perry, look up at what you did. Big brother, you changed the world. Thank you for everything, for taking care of us when on earth, for taking care of us now. I hope you found Mama and you can rest in peace with power. Thank you.
So obviously, like, we've been watching for like the last 2 weeks or a few weeks. You know, we've seen the video, and we've seen the protests. We've seen, you know, a lot of response, right? And it's grown, right? It hasn't died down, even though the officers were arrested, and even though they're being charged, and even though you know, defunding the mini or even disbanding the police department.
But the thing
in
is,
Minneapolis is on the table.
We've been saying it's systemic.
No, right.
It's
So
like, finally,
what I'm saying is, even after watching all that, nothing really, like, it was still, at least for me, removed as like, this is a race issue. But then hearing like the testimony of like the brother makes it like a family issue. You know, it's like you see it on the news and you see it as a protest, but then you hear it from his brother and it immediately becomes something you can relate to, because for him, he watched a family member on the tape. It wasn't just a guy that was treated unfairly or was being marginalized. And so, yeah. And that's why I feel like we had to watch it. It's because it shows you exactly the people and the community, like every single one of these deaths has impacted.
Well, I think they're finally starting to we're curious. People are finally curious as to how the hell did we get here? Like, you read the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and they're like, oh, that was like long time ago. And it's like a lot of people who are more privileged don't see that it's still happening now too. And now they're curious, like, wait, what? How is this still going on?
That's why
and then
it's nice to see people like Mitt Romney join the movement, because I think what people are beginning to understand and why this protest is so big and much bigger than just Black Lives Matters is because now everyone who's been marginalized economically, meaning like basically everyone who's poor, they realize it's a systematic issue.
Yeah.
And Black people being marginalized, it was like the original systematic issue in the United States. But now everyone who is part of that group of people that don't have like $400, like can't get it together, or who are like one paycheck away from like being on the street, it's like they have a reason to be outside because the system doesn't work for them either.
You can only squeeze out so much. And then you just have to
and so
squeeze everybody.
What the crazy thing about George Floyd to me is that he wasn't necessarily like a remarkable person. Like, when we look at his like history, he wasn't notable for anything, but he was like kind. He, like his brother said, like he addressed the officers by sir,
who knew him,
right? And there's videos coming out of him like addressing like the youth and like asking for change. And so he was he wasn't really remarkable, but he was so positive in like his community that his now decease and like passing has left such a big hole that I think that's why this was able to grow, because he was like the everyday, like George Floyd is like the everyday guy that everyone like has in their life somehow. He's just like a cheerful, like really nondescript, but like friendly guy.
But a good person to have.
Exactly. And I think that's why
ally.
He's almost like what also this reminds me of is Martin Luther King says he doesn't want to be a martyr. And so, George Floyd didn't want to be a martyr, but like his death is so important because he's so relatable. Anyways. So the defund the police movement is growing steam, but it's very controversial.
I know. So, it's been controversial.
But even amongst the Black community, who have seen the most, aggression from police, even they're pretty divided on it. So Dr. Cornel West,
because if they got caught within like a war but the cops that saved them were saving them from their own colored people. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it causes a lot of like,
so
the trauma leaves them not knowing what side, like who's who and what's what.
Exactly.
So there's a positive side. And I think original policing or whatever, was supposed to be positive.
Yeah. So
and that's
right.
what they don't want to remove. And defunding policing doesn't mean to dismantle the whole thing. It means it's not functioning the way it was we need it to for our communities now, to preserve and protect our communities from whatever And if it's protecting them from them, then they're the ones that need to go.
So Sean Hannity had two notable Black spokespeople. He has Dr. Cornel West. He looks like a Black Doc Brown. He's a professor at Harvard. And then he had Terrence.
Wait, you said a Black Doc. Wait, who's
Doc Brown? Is the Back to the Future doctor.
So the crazy.
He has like a really cool hairstyle. And the other guy that looks much more conservative is a civil rights lawyer. So Sean Hannity had them on his show, and he was asking originally Dr. Cornel West about defunding the police and how the Democrats can't get anything done.
So one writes all the theory, and the other one's on the ground.
Right, exactly. So they get into it. Let's watch the clip. We'll watch the whole thing so people can really see the context of how it starts and then how it really escalates and gets out of control.
Now, as unrest grips major cities all around the country, Chicago experiencing even more chaos and crime and carnage in their streets. Just listen to these chilling remarks, a recent conference call obtained by WTW News from a Chicago alderman and Lori Lightfoot's shocking response. Take a listen.
We can't expect our police, and I don't fault them at all, to be able to control this. But I know that we asked our faith base yesterday to stand as the front line between police and looters and rioters. And I am simply not comfortable telling my churches, those people, to be the intermediary in the middle of a riot. Half our neighborhoods are already obliterated. It's too late. What happens when they start going after residents, going into the neighborhoods? Once they start trying to break down people's doors. Next question. Well, no, I want an answer. You commented on everybody. I want an answer. It's not something you ignore. This is a question that I have.
I think you're 100% full of what I think.
Wait, hold on.
Right,
but
Jody.
do they not understand that for a lot of those communities, the police don't come to help anyone either? Like that was a problem with the cities. Like if there was a lot of minorities and stuff, if there was like a help call, usually they don't go in and like help the riot. They'll stop the riots only in front of the rich people. Like,
yeah. Right. And yeah, so you're hearing right there a back and forth about defund the police versus not, and like how, what's going to happen when like protesters show up and like, and so that's just one example. And so Hannity is about to have another example of that engagement on his show.
Now with reaction, we have civil rights attorney Leo Terrell, along with the co-host of the Tightrope podcast, professor at the ever-prestigious Harvard University, Dr. Cornel West. Dr. West, 749.
So that's Cornel West, Black Doc Brown, professor at Harvard. This is Lee Terrell, the civil rights lawyer.
Okay, civil rights lawyer.
Yeah, so let's watch.
Hannity.
Yeah, the white thumb is Hannity.
Cops, rocks, bricks, Molotov cocktails. 22 cops in D.C. hospitalized for concussions. We saw a 38-year police veteran murdered in St. Louis. We have a cop in Vegas shot in the head. 749. Do you support this madness of defunding the police?
Well, let me first say it's just good to be in dialogue with you. God bless your loved ones. And as you know, we just buried our old brother George.
We've all, there's universal, Professor, there's universal agreement.
We got to keep it. This day has been a very, very heavy day for many of us, my brother. So in talking about this, let's try to be clear about this now. We must have respect, and there must be ability to protect. You have to have police who respect the community. There has to be some community control, accountability of both citizens and police, and recognizing that the deeper issues of poverty, dilapidated schools, housing, shattered family, communities, not enough jobs with a living wage, that generates a despair.
Professor, let me ask you, serious question.
But there has to be democratic control over the police, though,
Professor, I need to ask you. Every liberal big city, Chicago, run decades by Democrats. They've allowed the violence, and they have failed our American children with the most horrific schools in the country.
Democrats or Republicans, though.
Yes.
It's just, who doesn't matter. The fact that they keep giving them money and they keep abusing their power in America, you give them money, you give them power. So they're saying, take away some of that power. How do you do that? You take some of the money away. You make them accountable.
Yeah. So Sean Hannity's original question, or first question to Dr. Cornel West was, how do you feel about the violence towards police? And, Dr. Cornel West is basically saying, like, everyone needs to be held accountable, both police and protesters. That's what he wants. And then Sean Hannity's second question is, all of these liberal Democrat states have or cities like Chicago have been democratically run for years. And it's like, why? It's like you asked him a question about police brutality, and then you automatically, your second question, you shifted it. Yeah, you politicized it, and automatically it's like, well, you're a Democrat. Why can't the Democrats get it together? And it's like,
but I was like, why did he even bring that up?
No, exactly.
So
and that's
distracting. I'm just like, wait, what? Who?
That's why.
What are these games?
That's why the news, like, they politicize things where you have to take a side, like you're forced to. It's like they make everything binary.
He didn't even need to. Like, this has nothing to do with like the. Oh, maybe because now it's about voting these people out, because technically the way to get them out, if they refuse to listen, is to vote them out.
Yeah, so let's keep going. So let's watch Dr. Cornell West's response to that, because he says, he's like, I wasn't a fan of the mayor. Like, why are you comparing us? And okay, so let's keep going with the clip.
They don't have enough education, and they certainly don't have enough jobs with a living wage. That's under Rahm Emanuel. Now, I'm no fan of Rahm Emanuel, but I'm certainly no supporter, as you know, of you and your good friend, Brother Trump himself.
Why did he not fix the violence?
But I'm going to ask in the name of truth.
Okay, Leo, why didn't he fix the violence? Why haven't they fixed our broken school systems? We have failed America's children.
Yeah, because we keep giving the money to the police.
Dr. Cornell West, the type of question you asked in a court of law, he won't answer them because he's just giving you old talking points. I'll speak to you, Dr. Cornell West, black man to black man. There's looting going on, and you try to compete. No, it's my turn. It's my turn. You try to conflate protesting and police misconduct. And shame on you. And you're absolutely wrong. You won't address the issue. You will refuse to address the issue because I'm talking to you. You're not my brother. You're not my brother. You are hurting black people by acting this position. You are taking the wrong position. No, my brother. That stuff plays out. That plays out. Address the question. Do you? Oh my gosh! You have lost control. You're a dinosaur. You're an outright dinosaur. You have lost it, sir. I'm not part of your group. I'm not part of your group. You have lost it. You are a dinosaur. And you know what?
Oh, you a Neolithic, my brother.
You are wrong, my friend. No, I don't think so. Because your position is so way off. I will not respect that.
You come out on the block disrespecting people. Yeah, you disrespect me the day that Brother Floyd
has to deal with DAs and, the chief of police. He can't take that stance like that. So he is trying to find that middle ground. That's the only way we can figure this out. It's like no one's gonna just it's like trying to say cut back on the military budget. When we say cut back, we're not saying get it remove it completely.
Right.
So it's like
this is a weird thing because what happened was Hannity was kind of trying to position it in a political way, and then Dr. Cornell West saw it and he just kind of stopped responding because he's like, you're just asking me baiting questions.
Yeah,
and so this guy comes along, he's like, let me ask you brother to brother, and then he immediately goes to, whose side are you on? And that's just how it all devolves.
Yeah.
And they just start screaming at each other. So
because if he's a lawyer, he should have just called him out on why did you just politicize this?
Curate asks WTF, who is this guy? Harvard professor, civil rights lawyer. That's what you have to know.
Cornell professor. Oh, wait, no, his name is Cornell. He's a Harvard.
Okay, so let's keep going with this clip. So there's 2 more minutes of this, so.
That does not work on me. That does not work on me. You're my brother. Keep saying that. It's all talking points. Old talking points. Those are old talking points.
Hang on, guys. All right, Leo, give me a second. Guys, all right, everybody's mic'd out. Hang on. Guys, one at a time. Cornell West, then we'll go to Leo.
Racist. I will check you too. Black man to black man.
This guy's like he's like the ref between I don't know, because sports are out, everything, we're just dying for entertainment, but this is really entertaining.
Hannity's no ref, he's the instigator.
No, but he can't fight like these guys. Anyways, let's keep going.
You're up.
Not on this day. Not when Floyd Jr. put in the grave. No.
Leo?
Okay, I'll wait. Okay, thank you. Can I just, you know what? You asked him a very simple question. He won't say he's against defunding the police because you know what? He's in favor of defunding the police. I'm opposed to it. And this man is a dinosaur. We have to protect our community, our black community. And you know why Professor West and I are on this program? Because we have education.
Okay, so this is the issue with, I think, media.
Like brothers at a dinner table.
This is the issue with media politics because this guy makes it seem like there's only 2 positions: defund the police or don't. And it's a lot more nuanced than that because it's not necessarily defunding them. It's reappropriating the budget to alleviate the duties that police officers have to do, which is basically everything when they have to go out and deal. It's not every situation you need an armed police officer, you know? And that's what, like, defunding the police is almost like poor PR, because it's like,
it's called restructuring.
Yeah, restructuring the budget to help the community.
Doesn't work. It needs to be restructured or just blown apart. If you're not going to let us restructure it,
So the fact that he's a lawyer, he knows what he's doing.
yes,
He
but
absolutely
he wins at this.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why he's on the news.
That's what the other guy said. Who pays you? It's like,
Yeah.
how do you think he makes his money? You're hiding behind your school, who's like, "Yay, we're all for liberal thought," but
Yeah, check yourself.
But-
Okay, let's keep going. There's a minute left.
Leo, let me go back to Professor West. Professor, go ahead. Professor.
You're a
Don't
dinosaur.
put words in my mouth. Sean,
You're a
what you have
dinosaur.
people on this show that can't respect the people who come
Oh,
on?
I'll tell. Oh my gosh, you're giving talking points. There's no respect there because you are just giving
Sean
talking
know I
points.
ain't got no talking points. Sean knows I'm as critical of the Democratic Party, oftentimes the
Answer
Republican
the
Party.
question.
I don't talk
Answer the
talking
question.
points at all.
Let me
You
ask-
don't want
you're
to
on the
know
fringe.
talking
You're
points.
on the
Let me,
fringe.
guys.
You're
Let
on
me
the
ask.
fringe.
Let me ask Cornell. You agree with Cornell West? Cornell West, I want to ask you a question.
That's right. Talk about truth and justice.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, so
You never been in the courtroom. You're not.
This is a barbecue without weed.
I'll match my credentials against you any day.
We ain't talking about credentials.
Cut him off.
We ain't
Cut
talking
him
about
off.
credentials. We
Cut
talking
him
about
off.
respect. We talking about respect,
You get no
man.
respect from me.
You got
You
your
get no
argument,
respect
lay
from
your
me.
argument out.
Cut
I
him
got
off.
mine. Don't put words in my mouth and don't come out here.
Cut his mic off. This is exactly
what
it
all right,
Yeah,
all right.
talking points.
I gotta let it go. Thank you both. A little out of control. I tried.
You're the one that started it.
Oh my god. Oh man. You have to laugh, or else you'll cry.
It is like
Damn.
daytime. This person soap operas.
You're right. They just need to chill. Chill out, bro. I'm not your brother.
It's like how are
Sorry.
we gonna get them to stop killing people? They have no right to just be
What? You sound like a racist.
killing.
I'm just kidding.
Because I called the police.
What do you mean
the
they?
Smurfs. I used to love Smurfs.
Oh, okay. So we're not done. We're obviously not.
geez.
We're not scientifically political. Is that a science? Political science?
I tried to read a book once in college about my friend who poli-sci said this was good. I couldn't get past like even the preface. Like
Yeah. So to help us dissect what actually went on, because unfortunately none of that was scripted, or I don't know, maybe it was.
Well, most people can't understand what Cornel West is saying. It's like you have to get to that level of education to start reading his books or to like, and
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, and understanding where he's coming from.
this
not
is why you lose it then.
right.
You need to kind of like Eli 5 it the way Trump does, and everyone's just like, yay, he's like for the people. I'm like, really?
All right. So the Smarty Pants on the Rising help us dissect this. So let's go to them.
Here's what is such a shame is Cornel West is one of the smartest, most insightful, most thoughtful people in the entire country.
She's talking about Cornel West, the black Doc Brown.
Did she
looking
go to
guy.
Harvard?
No, I don't know where she went.
Okay.
On race and class and what the reality is in America right now. And this is so classic cable news that you
Right.
take someone who is like a deeply thoughtful intellect and you turn the segment into that.
Well, that's the real issue. You know what was a great, by the way, I disagree with Cornel West on a lot. But you know what I liked hearing him on? Joe Rogan's podcast, over 2 hours.
Right.
It was like a thoughtful discussion.
Super thoughtful,
I know
super
you've
in-depth.
talked to him as well. And I think that, that really does go to show you, A, how the cable news medium serves nobody
Right.
on issues like this in particular. But you can also see how this is something that actually really bothers me. I think Sean's point is legitimate about like these are Democrat-run cities and all that. But people on the right need to do a much better job of understanding like there is no similarity. Like the Venn diagram between Cornel West and Rahm Emanuel is like there is not a lot right there in the middle.
No.
Might as well be in different political parties and would.
So Rahm Emanuel, I think, was like the mayor of Chicago who did a terrible job, but identified as a Democrat. And this is the core issue with identity Democrats or identity politics is as soon as you identify as Republican or Democrat, you're seen as the entire image of Republican or Democrat. So not only do you have to defend your political stances, you have to defend everything that apparently Rahm Emanuel or Barack Obama or Joe Biden has done because they're also Democrats.
Your people.
Right.
Your people.
And so what Sagar is saying is this is the issue with mainstream media. It's the same thing we were saying is like there's no actual discussion. It's all defense. It's like we're not going to discuss the issues that you want to discuss until you can defend why your team hasn't done it. Right? That was the issue with that segment. It's like, why defund the police when all of these Democratic run cities haven't been able to do any better? So let's keep.
That doesn't mean you changed. Wait, that's weird.
Yeah, no.
Is he saying it's just impossible to do?
That's what he's saying.
Because
the
then-
problem with mainstream media is like you have to play defense. Like you can't discuss the things you want to do because you're tied in with Rahm Emanuel, who is also a Democrat, and you have to defend what he did before you can actually like establish what you want to do. That's the problem with identity politics.
I felt like it was a trap if I tried to identify with one.
It is a trap.
And I could never do
it's
it.
It's like when people ask you your sign, they want to know how they can judge you. That's what. No, seriously. It's like anytime people ask like your personality trait or your blood type or your Myers-Briggs, they want to know how they can judge you. So yeah, or your political standing. What are your political views? It's like how can I judge you? How do you see the world? So let's keep going. There's still 4 minutes left.
If they were in Europe or someplace like that.
Completely, yeah.
And that's something that, I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, these are Democrat-run cities. And I mean, that's true, but they're establishment Democrat-run cities. And I think that it's important to always make that type of difference. And Cornel West's point on that, I don't think a lot of people are ready for people like him to come out there and actually tell the truth about somebody like Rahm Emanuel on their own.
Right.
They're like, no, I think it's terrible. Like
right. He's defunding schools.
How they've done, how they've carried themselves. This is a perfect illustration of how hot button issues like this should never be litigated on cable in particular. So
especially a place like Sean Hannity. And look, I've done plenty of Fox News, right? Especially like early in my career, I would take whatever book I've been on Sean Hannity's show. I've done basically all of it. And you come to realize that there are certain spaces and certain topics where you can at least say something that is thoughtful and interesting. And there are certain spaces, as demonstrated here, where that's just not going to be possible. So it's not about like, are you legitimizing Fox News by going on with Sean? Like they're plenty legitimate without me or Cornel West or Glenn or anyone else going on them. To me, it's just a question of, is it worth your time to go on? Are you going to be able to say even one thing that might change the audience mind, open their eyes? Is it going to be some semblance of a fair situation where people are actually interested in who you are, what your ideas are, and not just like attacking you personally, conflating your views with Rahm Emanuel's views, making you culpable for the actions of every Democratic mayor in every city? And you just know in spaces like that, that is not going to be the case. I mean, his mom.
Wait, so what she's saying is basically she's been on all these shows and they'll give you a fair time, but there are certain topics you just can't touch without it devolving into like these basic slugfests. And it's like, what does that say about public discourse about politics where this kind of behavior is normalized on national TV? It's like, people like to.
That's why I'm saying, like, he instigated that.
No, I know, and it's like people like to blame like Facebook and social media for being so divisive, which it is, but it's like that divisiveness content came from somewhere, and it's pushing people into these categories, and they're still doing it like on live television, and it's like, yeah, so where.
It's just entertainment.
The only place that you can literally see like a thorough, like a chill like discussion about actual topics is like the Joe Rogan Experience. It's like no wonder his podcast got bought for or licensed for like 100 million by Spotify, because people aren't getting their news from news anymore. They're just listening to like Bernie Sanders or Edward Snowden on Joe Rogan. Because he gives them a fair chance without like attacking them and like making them defend all of the mainstream media stuff.
But people are still, the people who are voting are still watching this.
That's why I'm saying it's an issue because it normalizes this discourse on politics that's so explosive on certain topics because they can't even discuss it on television. That's what Crystal Ball is. At least that's what I'm getting from what she's saying. So let's keep going with the clip.
Last night, Sean Hannity's monologue. Essentially, I mean, he says, I'm not really equating these, but he's like, Trump and George Floyd were both the victims of bad cops. Like,
I'm
what?
laughing because that's so
What? I mean,
so
I
crazy.
can't even, like, you can't even make that up. It is so crazy. And I think partly Fox News right now during this time is suffering from the same problem that Trump is suffering from. They don't know where to be on this issue because the protest movement itself is so popular. And we're going to cover how attitudes on racial justice and Black Lives Matter have shifted in a way that we've never seen in history on any hot button issue dramatically over a short period of time.
Another thing. I feel like this just exemplifies also that a lot of the educated class has lost touch and is disassociated, just as far removed from the working classes.
No, and the easiest way to see if someone's out of touch is to ask them, why do you think the protests are so big? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's like, because people, and you'll get answers like people want to take advantage of the system. They're bad actors. And it's like, that doesn't explain why it's so huge and why it has so much longevity.
Yeah, that's not like they were bad actors before.
No, right. And so if they don't understand that it's an economic and systematic issue that black people were like the face of for a long time, but now it affects everyone, and they think it's anything but that, even the educated class, they're out of touch. Mm-hmm. And that's the unfortunate thing. It's like, there are so many people who don't understand why there are so many people outside. And it's like...
Well, also the pandemic.
No, I know.
Literally, if everyone was able to go back to the
You think all of those people outside don't understand the risk? They absolutely do. But it's like, economically, they have no other choice. They have no jobs. They have no...
Well, I already lost my health insurance and get the vaccine anyway. So.
It doesn't matter if it's like for them financially, it doesn't matter if they get coronavirus or not. That's the truth. They're not going to go to the hospital anyways. Or I don't know. Maybe they will.
That's like what Oma ended up saying. She's like, just let me out. I don't care.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Okay, so let's keep going because there's still a minute and 40 of an analysis.
So some of their normal talking points about, Democrat-run cities, like some of those things just don't work in this scenario the way that they did in previous scenarios where the country was more evenly divided. And so I just think they don't know where to be and how to handle it.
If you're not moored in principles or in an ideology, then that's something that you very much find yourself on, trying to shift around. You saw the same thing on CNN and MSNBC, right? Like you have to justify everything Nancy Pelosi does and you have to say everything Trump does is bad. And not being in Tucker is, frankly, in my view, has been the only one who has been actually moored in heavily went out against the president, Jared Kushner even, and many of these others. But when you're somebody or when you're in a situation where everything is about trying to maneuver yourself to a predetermined destination, then it actually makes the coverage not as interesting. And also the reason, we play this is just an example of how, real issues of debate, discussion that, we engage in here, which are, contentious and hard, all that, it does nobody any good. A CNN panel or a Fox panel like that in order to have something like this happen.
Right. I mean, again, here you have someone who is a deep thinker and writer and scholar on these issues. And that's the segment that you want to have. And look, I'm not actually familiar with the other gentleman. He may be also, he
made some good points.
Yeah, he may be a deep thinker and well versed on this as well. But that's so emblematic of how cable news and the format and the approach just basically ruins and kills everything and makes us all dumber. At the end of the day.
This just really
dumber? Why do people say that it makes us dumber?
Because you're not getting discussion. You're just getting like a politicized version of an argument, which is just two sides. We're on one, you're on the other. And that's what she's saying is make us dumber. It's not a discussion. It's defense and attacking and winning and losing. And so this just explained to me something because
then we don't get anywhere.
A lot of people say that Barack Obama is untouchable. Like no one criticizes him, especially the Democrats. And I realized
Are you kidding me? What?
On the Democrat side, he's cherished as like this amazing president. And I realized the reason why is because everyone plays the same game. It's like they're going to criticize what Trump does as a form of grouping every Republican in the same group. So the moment they criticize
Trump
Obama,
wasn't always a Republican.
no, I know, but I'm just saying that's the game, right? It's like we're gonna
Yes,
blanket
'cause
like
he's-
anyone who identifies as Republican, all of a sudden their worst Republican is now the blanket child for or the poster child for Republicans on the other side. And so I think the moment you start criticizing or the moment you criticize
like a kid who's tired
Obama,
of hearing their parents fight, I just want out.
no, but the moment you criticize your own side, you are now, according to the game rules, culpable for everything your side has done. And it's like, oh, you're okay with drone bombings? You're okay with increasing war spending?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I get that argument. I'm like, what? I never said that just because I want
No, but
to, you know.
This is why they won't criticize their own side, because they don't want to have the argument that they're also culpable for what their side has done. And so that's why Barack Obama is untouchable by the Democrats. Like, you think Bernie Sanders said anything bad about Barack Obama?
I tried to be nice about the Democrats, and I keep calling them the Republicans, only because it's through this administration, the Trump, that I'm so mad, because they're the ones that keep calling me, like, their end argument is you're a Trump supporter. I'm like, what? How is that the argument? It's like, oh, you're a Trump supporter. I'm like,
Yeah.
that can't be the...
Because unfortunately, politics in the United States is just two sides. You're either on our side or you're on the other side. So if we're gonna have a discussion and you don't agree with me, you're automatically the worst on the other side.
Us as people,
It does-
we are not by whatever. We're not like...
Well, then you just explained it. Like the way we see it on the news is now how we discuss things outside, and that's why you get that kind of discussion, because they're replicating what they see on the news. It's like monkey see, monkey do.
Oh, I don't like watching the news.
Yeah, but you're arguing with people who do. That's why I'm saying they're using the same argument tactics that the news does, where it's like, oh, you want to defend or you want to defund the police? Look at all these Democratic-run cities like Chicago with Rahm Emanuel. Like, defend that. It's like, I'm not a Rahm Emanuel supporter.
You know, there's other cities and counties that actually have done it well.
All right.
Like
Well, we got to get ready for
New
another.
Jersey,
We got to get ready for another
even
420.
Santa Ana.
We got 15 seconds or 10 seconds. What city are we doing? Let's just say Chicago. I don't know if it's our 420 or not.
This is my other one. Oh, that's my mid one. Look, I have them marked out.
Nice.
All right, here we go.
All right. Happy 420. Here's our 420 light up song. Light up, guys.
What's wrong, Ryan?
I just had the craziest dream that I just turned into Wayne Brady.
Oh, that wasn't a dream.
Wait, what?
We did it, guys. We made it to another one. Like always, we tried to end every show on something chill because we covered a lot of heavy stuff today.
The world's coming to an end.
I honestly couldn't find anything. And so...
to be chill?
I don't know. Not really. I mean, yeah, I tried to look. And so we're just going to cover...
How about when we find out something good about, like, one of the natural homeopathic meds we like to...
What? Okay, well, yeah,
You know,
maybe...
like good news about, like, oh, there's something, you know, it helps with PTSD. Oh,
Yeah.
like the COVID prophylaxis. Or,
Well-
you know.
I think, yeah, that could definitely be a future segment. But today I'm going to go over a segment that MKBHD... Someone commented on Reddit. The black guy that does tech reviews.
Oh, okay.
So, I know, Kier's so smart. Look at this guy. Kier says, you guys should get the standard office clock set with all the different time zones so you can see where it's 420.
I have the world clock in my phone.
Duh.
I know.
Kier, what are you studying in uni, by the way? Can you let us know in the comments? Just so we know, like, if we need something in that field, we know someone who has studied it. So, MKBHD is the black guy on YouTube that does the tech reviews. His name's Marquez Brownlee, but someone on Reddit commented Marcas Brownie, and that's now how I say it in my head.
Oh my gosh. Marquez Brownie. Okay.
Marquez Brownie.
He's in California. The Northern Cali guy.
Is he? Anyways.
Oh, I don't know.
So something I've been really impressed by is Apple. Well, I've been impressed by them my entire life. But let's take a video of this because we have a few companies. We have Clean Farms, which is a cannabis
co-op,
and then we have Photon, which is a software company. But everything we do, it runs on Apple, from our phones to our iPads to the computer that's running this live stream. And it's not because we're like pretentious people. It's because
I was retarded and couldn't get all my stuff to connect, and Joseph's like, "Forget it, we're gonna get them all."
Well, no, that's one. But honestly, Apple over time has proven to us be the cheapest solution.
Well, because we didn't want to keep renewing. I'm like, I don't want to keep having to redo my files on a new.
Well, yeah, but also their equipment doesn't die. I have a MacBook from 2006 that my dad still uses, and so let's take a look at this video.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it outlasted all of our.
Yeah. So
tablets,
that's what I mean. It's the cheapest.
Tablets,
it's cheapest over time.
Our phones.
So let's take a look at this video on why we're on Apple.
The ecosystem. The ecosystem. There are tales all over the internet about this ecosystem in tech reviews and all kinds of iPhone videos. Probably every HomePod video on the internet has that word or that phrase in it somewhere. And even in regular everyday conversations, if you ask somebody why they use an iPhone, it more or less comes down to the same answer. Sometimes it is just because it's the best all-around phone and they believe the hardware is superior. That's sometimes, but really often, like really, really often, the answer has something to do with the ecosystem. Ecosystem, a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment. So in tech, an ecosystem is just a community of interacting objects. So Apple makes a ton of devices. The iPhone, the iPad, the Mac, the Apple Watch, the Apple TV, the HomePod, AirPods. But they also make a lot of software and proprietary technology that ties them all together. AirPlay, AirDrop, Continuity, iCloud. So once they can draw you into the ecosystem somewhere with one of their devices, let's say an iPhone, for example, you get an iPhone like many people do, then they can try to lure you to spend more money on other Apple products because they just work so well together. Now, most companies have a family of products. That's not new. It's not like Apple's the only one doing that. But what makes this particularly unique ecosystem so successful, maybe the most successful ecosystem ever, is not only how well they work together, but the walls they've built up around those things. Living inside this Apple ecosystem is sort of like what we call a walled garden. You may have heard that expression before. Meaning everything that's in the garden, in these walls, it's this beautiful, luscious garden, everything is green, it's everything you could ever want, but these walls on the outside are really tall, and they kind of don't want you trying to climb out or trying to explore beyond those walls. Just look at all the great stuff in here. Basically, once you get a couple of Apple devices, you start to get into the ecosystem. Let's say you get an iPhone and a MacBook, just those two things. They make it as easy as possible. You start using iMessage. You start getting text messages on your phone, and then you can reply to them on your computer. Super easy. Blue bubbles everywhere. You're web browsing on your phone. Then you sit down at your computer, and it shows up for you to pick up exactly where you left off. You have iCloud Drive, so any files on one are always on the other. Anything not showing up? AirDrop. Peer-to-peer sharing. Legendary. You have tethering, so the MacBook always has the iPhone's internet wherever you go. Want to make a video call? I guess FaceTime's right there. You can answer it on either device. You ask Siri to remind you for something, it'll put it in the Reminders app every time. So, okay, now you're in the market for a smartwatch.
Okay, so he says, maybe you start with an iPhone and then, that lures you into getting a MacBook. My issue with that is, on the market, there is no better phone-computer combination.
Yes.
And
I liked it for work. When I needed it for work, it was such an easy.
Yeah, so I know that because I see a lot of you're a Generation X.
Yeah.
You're a Zoomer. So I see a lot of people your age, and they have basically an Android and a PC. And so Android and PC, I think computers in general, they're managerial in terms of you can manage anything you want to do from a Mac to a PC. And that's why a lot of people prefer the price of a PC, because a PC can function the same as a Mac. But then what you don't get is operational productivity, which means you can just automatically do more when you have an iPhone and a Mac. So if a person needed to get a file from their Android to a PC, they would need to figure out either like I need to email it to myself, I need to put it on a thumb drive, I need to download an app and use Dropbox. But automatically on a Mac and an iPhone, it's built in with AirDrop. And so I haven't had to deal with a third-party cloud company like Dropbox or Google Cloud or my own thumb drive for literally, I feel like 3 or 4 years because of AirDrop. Like, because I can just wirelessly send everything. It's proprietary. And so what he says about like it kind of lures you in, like it does, but then it keeps you there because there is no better alternative when you want things to work seamlessly with like your phone, your computer, your tablet, your watch.
Also, before when I was in PC and stuff, it's like I had to figure out how it worked. And so I kind of like, but it was just a headache every time it changed. Whereas Apple, I don't need to know, but whatever complaints I have, they seem to fix.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep going with this. There's 3:30 left on this.
Well, I mean, you just get an Apple Watch. Like, what other options are there, really? Now you can answer texts on your watch, too. Blue bubbles everywhere. Answer calls on your watch. There's FaceTime still. Ask Siri to set reminders on the watch. It'll put them in the Reminders app. Everything works together so beautifully. Okay, now you're in the...
So there's 5 versions of the Apple Watch now. They have the version 1. On sale, they have the version 3 and the version 5. I have the first version. Everyone who I know, except you, that has the first version, they still use it. Because it... And again, I think on the market... Exactly, he has the first version. And so it shows the longevity because I didn't think I'd be using the Apple Watch this long, and it works fine. Like I don't even see myself replacing it anytime soon. And then 2, it also goes to show there is no better phone watch combination, like as well as like phone computer
I feel like
combination.
Mine's starting to act like a PC phone. It's like what it won't.
Yeah, you need to take yours to the Genius Bar, which is also another benefit of Apple.
Oh yeah,
you have a physical place to take your device.
Yes, someone's Pixel book like crashed out.
He couldn't go to Best Buy. He couldn't go to anywhere.
There's nowhere. There's no.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay.
Market for a smart speaker. It's a pretty new market. A couple of options out there. Seems like it makes perfect sense to just go with the Apple one. Now suddenly wireless headphones are gaining steam. You're in the market for some wireless earbuds. AirPods are right there. They work perfectly. You get the idea.
Okay, that's different. AirPods are different because they have the W2 chip, which makes Bluetooth connection faster and seamless amongst Apple devices. So that's because I have a pair of Bluetooth headphones that don't have that, and it works great for the one device it's paired to. It's a pain in the ass to move it to other devices. So yeah, yes, Apple is the best AirPods to get if you have Apple, but they're also better like physically with technology.
They have upgraded hardware.
Or no, proprietary chips that they use to pair with their hardware. It's that easy for them.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. But a chip is still hardware, isn't it? It's still hardware. So they have actually good tech.
And it's really
beyond what other tech has right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just pretty.
Yeah.
Services
not
and
just
products.
Software thing.
No, it's not just to make money. I mean, yeah, it's
It's
expensive.
not just an economy thing. It's actual. Yeah, there's an actual product, hard item that is of value because it sets it above other ones. It's
Yeah, and they put it in their Beat headphones, which I guess they own, so they would have to.
Are designed to be as good as possible, yes, of course, but they're also designed to be these little hooks to keep you in the Apple ecosystem, to keep you giving them information, and to keep you buying more Apple products as long as possible. And the way to keep you using those products is to make those products as good as possible within the ecosystem. And those are key words, within the ecosystem. This explains the existence of so many Apple products that on the surface or from the outside, from behind those walls, can seem kind of limited or pointless or dumb, especially in new markets where there's just the beginnings of competition. Like, why does the HomePod exist in 2018? A smart speaker that only uses Siri, only uses Apple Music, does not connect to Bluetooth, does not connect to anything that's not an iPhone, does not have a headphone jack. Because for that guy who uses Apple Music and has an iCloud account and has an iPhone, it's kind of perfect. To be honest though, I've even been guilty of being in the ecosystem. You know, despite being, I use Android, so I'm not tied in as deep. I use some multi-platform stuff, Spotify, Dropbox, things like that. But I'm a Final Cut Pro editor because Final Cut Pro is really good. And Final Cut Pro is Mac only, and it will probably pretty much always be Mac only. So what about leaving? What about getting out of the ecosystem? Well, in Apple's case, pretty much everything is tied to your iCloud account, and if you want to get out of the ecosystem, you have to rip that information out of your iCloud and sort of import it into that new service. a lot of times much easier said than done. The more closely tied to iCloud that device is, the more hooks it has into other parts of the ecosystem that make it harder to take out. So accessories like AirPods, for example, they work perfectly with things like your iPhone and your iPad and your MacBook because of the W1 chip. They pair effortlessly. We all know it just kind of works the Apple way. But if you want to switch to another pair of headphones, it's just that one hook in and you can move to another pair of wireless headphones and get away with it. Now, if you use Apple Music and want to switch to Spotify, because it's clearly better, again, it's like one hook, but good luck trying to switch your entire library between the platforms. Entire companies have been born trying to make that process easier. But trying to leave the iPhone to go to another phone that's not in the ecosystem is tough because there's a lot of hooks into this. All of your app purchases are gone. Your FaceTime is gone. Your AirPods become useless. Your HomePod becomes useless. You can't use the Reminders app anymore. Your Apple Watch becomes a paperweight, and iMessage is gone. And then the iPhone, the holy grail for shepherding people into this garden, is so hard to leave that a new phone could come along with a better screen, better battery, no notch, a better camera, better battery life, a headphone jack, and they'd still skip it because that ecosystem, though, it's kind of incredible. Also, by the way, there's other ecosystems too. There's Google's, Amazon's, Samsung's. There's some more complete than others. And just generally, you'll notice ecosystems from everyone are expanding and evolving.
You know what's funny is his description of leaving Apple. Like, you have to find all of these alternatives for things you used to do regularly.
Seamlessly.
Right, like,
Yeah,
iMessage and FaceTime and Dropbox for AirDrop. That reminds me of when people
anytime, but
that reminds me of when people leave religion and they all of a sudden have to figure out like how to, like what's my morality beyond, a book, and it's like
gauge.
It's because I feel like I've had similar conversations with both types of people. Anyways, so yeah, he kind of goes over why it's hard to leave, but one of the things that he doesn't go over, the best part about Apple, is the price. It sounds like a joke, but this guy named Linus Tech Tips covers it, and he's a traditional PC guy, and so it's interesting to get his opinion on this aspect. So let's go over this really quick.
Number 9 is that Apple products cost more. And believe it or not, I'm actually not joking with you guys. Apple has made a lot of noise in recent years about how the product is the product instead of the customer being the product. But they really do walk the walk for the most part. When's the last time Apple tried to cram their crappy web browser down your throat so they can collect more of your data to sell? When have they served you an ad when you went to launch a program? They haven't. So for many users, the idea of paying the Apple tax up front in exchange for the peace of mind of knowing that they can actually turn off all of the OS level telemetry and data collection is a sound investment. Finally, number 10, reliability. Now this one is sure to spark some debate in the comments, but guys, hear me out for a moment. If your Mac fails, Time Machine is flippin' awesome. You set it up once and you can basically forget about it until you need it, and it's there to get you back up and running lickety-split. Furthermore, Apple's versions feature, which allows access to previous versions of documents and files, makes it an even greater asset to both professionals and average users.
And I can speak about reliability because my dad has not only used my MacBook since, I guess 2012 is when I stopped using that one. So it's a 2006 MacBook, and he started using it in 2012. I have never had to help him with the computer. That my dad is 75? He's pretty old. Yeah, 73. He's in his like mid 70s. And he still uses the computer every day because I see it in his on his desk. And he has never asked me for help. And it's incredible. It's a teenager computer.
Does he ask you for help with his phone? He's the only one that has a Samsung phone.
No, I'm just saying he uses my computer from 2006 that I literally forgot about. And that's why I'm saying it's reliable because it's a 14-year-old computer that still works, and I don't have to do any technical support on it to get it to work.
Yeah, they're pretty reliable.
Anyways,
all our phones.
Keir is studying at the London School of Economics and Political Science.
Oh.
That's super cool because
we got a lot of questions.
Yeah. Anyways, if you're coming out to California, we're a little far from Berkeley, but we can make it work.
Yeah,
let us know.
6-hour drive.
All right. We hope you guys had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun.
Yay.
We'll be back tomorrow a little bit earlier because we're going camping.
Yeah. So what time are we starting?
1:20. We're starting 9:20 Western Pacific.
Pacific
So
Standard.
that's 12
4 hours earlier.
12:20. Yeah. 12:20 Eastern. So yeah, 4 hours earlier.
Okay, 4 hours earlier than our normal.
All right, yeah. So we'll see you 4 hours earlier tomorrow than our normal time.
Ooh, maybe it won't be a sauna by now.
I know it's getting hot here. We hope you had fun. Remember to take your coronavirus prevention. If you don't know, cannabis prevents coronavirus infections. Also, if you don't have buds, we're your buds. We hope you guys stay safe. See you tomorrow.
Bye.